right, freedom fighters, welcome back to the Hannah Faulkner Show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I am so excited that you all joined with us today. Today's episode guest is Pastor Artur Pawlowski. He is from the communist country of Canada under Justin Trudeau. And his story is, it's sad to hear what happened to him in Canada as he came over from Poland, then went to Greece. And then those in Greece promised him that Canada would be a free land where he could express his freedom of religion, which of course was a lie. And it was the complete opposite. But before we welcome in Pastor Artur Pawlowski, I have a few things to tell you guys. We have a few merch pieces that I want you guys to check out. They are so amazing. I mean, I love the, if you've heard me speak, you probably have heard me say my pronouns are USA, or my pronouns are God-fearing, gun-toting, patriot, or whatever, to kind of trigger the left, right? So we've got a crew neck. It's my pronouns are USA. And then on the back, we've got land of the free, home of the brave. And then one of my personal pieces, because I do believe we need to bring back masculine men, it's make men masculine again. I don't know if you all can see that, but make men masculine again. And then on the back, it says hard times create hard men, soft men create hard times, kind of similar to the red sweatshirt. But you guys can get your very own apparel just like that on cultureof1776.com. You can use code PATRIOT to get 10% off your order. Great gift ideas. Maybe you want to buy it for a boyfriend or a husband. It's great. But before we jump in, don't forget to go follow us on Instagram, Hannah Faulkner 1776, Twitter, Hannah F 1776, and don't forget to follow us on Rumble so you can keep posted on all of our shows. It's the Hannah Faulkner Show on Rumble. But today's guest is Artur Pawlowski, Pastor Artur Pawlowski. I'm going to play a clip for you guys because this is one of his one of the times he was arrested, and he's calling them Nazi, the Gestapo, because that's literally what they are.
What's your name, officer?
Go with the Nazi style! Go with the taser me! Kill me! Do it the Nazi! What are you doing to the clergymen in this country? Who you aiding? Who are you aiding, man? You criminal! You criminal! What are you doing? Record this, man. Record this. Look what they're doing to a clergyman. Look what they're doing to a preacher. To a priest.
I do not cooperate with Nazis.
You're a priest. This is a priest. You understand that? You criminals.
Okay, back up.
You criminals.
Back up. Space, back up.
Look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. Look what they're doing.
This is what's happening right now in America. What's happening in Canada and across the world is literally what happened in 1930s Nazi Germany. And I believe that what we're seeing, just as Archer says in today's episode, is it's a repeat of history. If we do not understand our history, if we don't understand who we're fighting against, we are doomed to repeat history over and over again. And I mean, we're seeing it today. We just saw the 3 presidents over those universities deny that calling for the genocide of Jews violates their code of conduct. They literally said that calling for the genocide of Jews is okay and it's just expressing their freedom of speech, when in reality that's violence, calling for violence against a specific race. But what we're seeing right now, again, just like our Pastor Artur said, is a repeat of history, because we've had our heads in the sand for so long. We've been like the Pharisees, judging people in California. We've thanked the Lord we're not like California, when in reality, we're going to be worse than California. We're going to be just like Canada in less than 10 years if we do not take a bold and vigilant stance on these issues we're fighting for and fighting against. I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Please share it with your friends, with your family, and even those that may not want to hear it but may need to hear it. I hope you guys enjoy. Tune in. All right. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Artur, for coming on the Hannah Faulkner Show today. I am so excited to talk with you.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm super excited because we have been waiting for a very long time for the youngsters like yourself to rise up, stand up, and keep pushing. I mean, in the end of the day, it's going to be your country that you will take over. So you better join the older generation.
That's right. That's right. Well, the first time I had heard your name briefly, but the first time I've ever heard you speak and heard your story was at the Reawaken America tour in Tulare, California a couple weeks ago. And I think you spoke right after me. And it was so cool to hear your story, to meet your wife and what you guys are doing. It's just incredible. But for those of, for my listeners that don't, haven't heard your story and haven't heard what you and your wife have gone through, first off, are you in Canada right now?
Yes, Calgary.
Okay, I wanted to see if you're in Canada. Okay, that's awesome. Well, share a little bit about your story because you were not originally raised in Canada. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your story from traveling from Poland and living under the Soviets and then traveling or immigrating to Canada, if you don't mind sharing your story, that would be amazing.
Yeah, of course. And history is very important. I know that some people think it's boring, but I mean, what we are witnessing right now, Hannah, it's a repetition of history. That's why I'm so fixed on educating people, teaching history, not just theology. And by the way, the whole Bible is a historical book at the same time as well. So as you can tell, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. I've seen this movie before, and that's why I am so vocal, yelling and screaming, if you will, from the rooftop about what we are witnessing right now, because the only way I can describe to you that, our childhood is hell. Yep. Totalitarian regime is hell. Constant lineups, nothing in the stores. You could be arrested for anything. I mean, literally anything. Your neighbor could say that you said something, or your neighbor could say that he heard you listening to a European radio. That was 5 years of imprisonment. And of course, the police officers were not just arresting you. You were always tortured, beaten. We did not have regular trials. The judges were political activists, just like we see right now in your country and in our country as well. Those judges are CNN reporters, CBC reporters, political activists. We had show trials. So I grew up in that kind of environment where 50,000 people were ruling over 36 million Poles until one day, when the Poles finally had enough and they took it to the streets under the solidarity banner with God and solidarity with each other for the sake of their children, they took it to the streets. And 9 years later, we took down the Iron Curtain, the Berlin Wall fell down, and the biggest empire collapsed. So we've seen the atrocities of the communists and socialists. Of course, I grew up in Poland. I've heard the stories from the elders, my grandparents, about what the Nazis did. That's why when I try to shake you up, if you will, I use a language that has not been used for a while. I mean, now it's common, but when I started to express myself, because, we don't fight with violence, we fight with our words, non-compliance, civil rights movement style. And that was Polish solidarity. When I called them Nazis, Gestapo, you got to remember, I was doing my best without violence to show the world what is really happening. And Gestapo, by the way, it means political police. So those police officers were no longer peace officers. They were just gangsters in uniform working for the political parties. And to this day, that's exactly what we have in Canada. Those officers are not serving us. They're serving political entities.
That's right. No, you're exactly right. And I think a lot of people don't realize how many of the ideas that came from Eastern Europe and all over Europe have come to America and infiltrated America in every single institution. And even Canada, Canada is to another level, but what's happening in Canada right now is coming to America. I mean, it's already in America right now, but people just haven't been awakened to what's actually happening. But you've been arrested 16 times, correct?
Yeah, actually more than that, 16 times. I was arrested many times. I was detained, which is technically arrest as well. You're not allowed to move. I faced over 340 citations and over 120 court cases, including Court of Appeals. I mean, I was at times more in court, more in lawyers or in jail than in my church as a pastor. And you got to remember, all of my crimes were associated with my job, which is feeding the poor. Believe it or not, my first attack that I received from the Canadian government was for giving free goods and services. I was told that if I give a sandwich to a dying child on the streets of Canada, I am committing a crime. If I distribute printed material, which is Bibles and gospel tracts, I'm committing a crime. Congregation without the approval of the mayor, that's a crime. Preaching, it's offensive, that's a crime. Reading portion of the Bible, that's a crime. Believe it or not, in 2006, I was the first Canadian to be ever arrested for publicly reading Bible. No amplification, just 6 of our parishioners, 7 police officers. I was taken to prison and faced a year of imprisonment. So for me, this craziness did not start with a big lie 3.5 years ago. I have been trying my best to awaken Americans, Canadians, and the entire Western world that we are witnessing a repetition of history. Hannah, you got to remember, and people don't know history, and that's the problem. And that's how the elites, if you will, like it. They like it that way. You know how many laws were enacted against the Jewish people in the middle of the 1930s? Over 2,000. Over 2,000 laws were enacted against the Jewish people during the Nazi regime before Adolf Hitler started the Second War. What is happening to your country, what is happening to my country, is exactly a repetition of history, death by 1,000 cuts. They're enacting bylaws, they're enacting little laws here, executive order there, and then you have no rights whatsoever. Look, we have political prisoners. I was a political prisoner for 2 years, a year and a half. I was on house arrest. I was imprisoned multiple times. You have January 6 people, political prisoners. Don't kid yourself. They are political prisoners because they dared to stand with your rightful president, Donald Trump, and voice their opinion. So Americans, when I travel around America, and I love America, by the way, Hannah, I was there many times, and every single time I listen to your anthem, or I stand there among the most amazing patriots that I have ever seen in my life. I declared, I said it a couple of years ago, I said, I don't care if America wants me, I am adopting myself. I am an American, either you like it or not. That's what I love. I love the American spirit. It's so much alike Polish spirit. We are fighters. We are willing to stand up and be counted in history. But also, I want you to tell, I want your viewers to understand, because many Americans came to me and they said, well, this will never happen to us. We have the Constitution. We have the Declaration of Independence. We've got our amendments. Listen, people, you don't get it. Tyrants don't care about your piece of paper. You have to understand, totalitarian regime does not care about your piece of paper. You must care about that piece of paper. You must stand up and fight what's evil. You must push those abusive laws, and illegal, by the way. And of course, your amendments are already infringed on your freedom of speech, your right to carry a weapon. All of those things in different jurisdictions have been attacking your fundamentally guaranteed rights. So when I hear Americans telling me, oh, this will never happen to us, you're just not paying attention. It's already happening. You're just in a denial.
No, you're exactly right. And I mean, just the basic, Josh Alexander, an incredible patriot. I think he's 17 years old. I just had him on my show the other day. And the fact that he was being arrested for declaring that men and women are different for one of his protests, it's disgusting and it's disturbing. And the fact that Americans really, I mean, surely just Americans, across the country, most people don't know what's going on. But in Canada, most people are awake, they know what's happening. But in America, we're seeing a, entire population of people that have absolutely no idea what's happening. And like you said, they're living under this rock of, oh, we don't live in California. California, oh, we don't live in the more Democrat states, therefore this isn't happening and we don't need to worry about it, when in reality, we actually have men going into women's bathrooms. We have pornographic content in our books. We have people getting arrested for saying certain things that, didn't abide by, the political correctness or whatever it may be. We just saw the three presidents, the MIT president, the University of Pennsylvania president, and the Harvard University president just not deny that calling for the genocide of Jews violates their code of conduct. And this is what we're seeing. We're literally seeing, like you said, a repetition of 1930s Nazi Germany. And I do believe that if people do not awake to what's actually happening, we're going to see it again, face to face. And I just had Mel K on the show. I'm sure you're familiar with Mel K. She's really highlighting, what's actually happening and who are they? Who are we fighting against? Who's leading this globalist agenda? But I believe, more than that, this is biblical prophecy that we're seeing. In order for the Lord to come back, we have to have a one world government, right? But I want you to talk a little bit about more on the history, because I think that's so important. Like you said, if we do not understand our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And that's what we're seeing right now, is we're repeating history over and over again because we're asleep. We have our heads in the sand. So why don't you share a little bit more about the history of these issues and how we got to the point where we're even seeing that people are confused on whether they're male or female?
Well, it's indoctrination, especially the kids like you. I mean, think about it. People were kind of awakened for the past few years and would say, oh my God, what is happening? But this craziness started 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's nothing new. I myself have been warning people for the past 20 years, but this started way, way before I came to Canada from Poland. This indoctrination started very, very long time ago, because that's the plan. And you were talking about people, hiding, denying the truth, not willing to acknowledge what's happening. That's the ostrich, right? But you have to understand, when you put your head in the sand, what is sticking out? I mean, you're totally exposed. People have no idea that it will bite them. Evil, if I can describe what we are witnessing right now, is like a cancer. And you have to deal with the cancer. You cannot just ignore it. You have to cut it out, or it will eventually kill you. And not just, this cancer is not after my generation. It's not after my parents. This cancer is after my children and kids like you, because they want to control every aspect of your life. What we're witnessing right now is the wannabe pharaohs rising up, turning everybody else into slaves. And that's why they're not even hiding. They're telling you will own nothing and you will be happy. And yet at the same time, the same people they're telling you just went to Davos with over 1,000 jets, private jets, that burns more than your car driving it for life. We are talking about the people that are telling you will own nothing, and your devil, demon-possessed psychopath Bill Gates has accumulated more land than any other human in United States of America. Those people that are telling you will be eating bugs, crickets, they went to Davos and were spotted eating the most expensive Japanese steaks. So it's one law for you and another law for somebody else. They are the elites, they are the kings, they are the pharaohs, they are the gods, and you are the slaves. That's why every time the so-called health officers were saying anything, automatically was becoming a law, because that's what pharaohs do. When they declare something, it has to become law. So people, you got to understand, we are seeing a brutal fight, good versus evil, slavery or enslavement versus the wannabe pharaohs. So it's really up to you. If you want to fight this, if you want to stand against that, and I'm not talking about guns and swords. I mean, there are better ways to fight them. Think about it. If we would just refuse to cooperate, you've got 350 million people. If people would just simply say, no, you're evil, wicked Bill Gates or Schwab or Harari or Clinton or Obama, those psychopaths, bloody murderers, no, we're not going to follow your orders. We will not submit ourselves and our children into this genocide. Actually, for you, we have something else. We'll charge you with crimes against humanity and with treason. Those politicians that have done this to you and to me and to others should be charged with treason. And Poland is a very peculiar country because now I understand why God brought me to the Western civilization. I understand why we had to go through hell back and forth, because I've seen it all. I've seen the totalitarian regime in action. I saw the remedy. I saw the solidarity movement for 9 years when the Polish people fought the Soviets and communism and socialism, and the whole thing collapsed. And I came to North America, seeking freedom. And yet God is allowing me now to fight for the freedom of others. And quite often I say, Hannah, to the people, you may not be willing to stand up and fight for yourself. I get that. When you get older, you don't have as much strength. You just want to be left alone. You just want to retire, whatever is in people's heads. But I say to them, if you don't want to do it for yourself, fine, that's okay, but do it for the children and their children. Because what kind of a nation we're going to give you, kids like you, it's up to us. We are making that decision together. What kind of United States of America do you want? Whose land is it? Because if it's Biden's land, then fine, I rest my case. Just be a good slave. But if you're like me, if you believe that God has given us this earth as a blessing for all to enjoy, then that's my land. That's your land. That's our land. That's what God has given us as an inheritance. So rise up, stand up, and push this great evil away. And there are all kinds of ways of doing it. So for right now, I mean, as you know, I was arrested during the big lie. I was arrested multiple times. My brother was arrested multiple times. My son was arrested. I was charged over 40 times, arrested, rearrested. I was charged with terrorism for being part of the truck convoy. I'm a convicted terrorist, according to the Canadian government, because I did a sermon on a private land to the truckers, telling them what? Stand for God and stating God-given rights. Do it peacefully. No guns, no swords. Do it for the children. Do it civil rights movement style. Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Solidarity Way. And for that, I was arrested like El Chapo of Calgary, Al Capone of Canada, by RCMP officers like your FBI. I was arrested by detectives, uniformed police, undercover, under SWAT team, anti-terrorists, the whole 9 yards, interrogated and put in prison for giving people messages of hope, because the pharaohs don't want their slaves to have any hope.
Well, I want you to talk a little bit about, because I've heard you, and I think you talked a little bit about this at the Reawaken America tour. And it's the principle of, God can only give us so much. He gives us a little, and if we are trusted, he only gives us as much as he can trust us with, right? And so I want you to talk a little bit about, the leading up point to where you are now, how the Lord has brought you to where you are now in Canada, and all the persecution, the torturing, everything that you faced in Canada, how the Lord has led you to that moment. If you don't mind talking a little bit about that, but also including, how your parents have raised you. Did you come from a home where your parents raised you and with a biblical worldview? Did they instill these biblical principles into your heart, or what was that like? What was that like for you?
No, growing up in Poland had very little to do with the Bible. I mean, Poland was a Catholic nation, like pretty much 99.9%. So my mom sent me to the church like everybody else. That was just the norm. My father is an atheist, so he says. So it was a mixture, mixed feelings, mixed messages. Of course, the government, and listen to this, every totalitarian government doesn't want you to believe in God, or they want you to believe in their version of God, which is always a messed up thing. It's not the real God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the creator of heavens and the earth. So I grew up in hell, and I grew up in a nation that was very messed up if it comes to religion. Religion was to control the people. The Vatican, the Pope, and the whole 9 yards, it was it was not a biblical view. But I have to say that the Catholic Church stood strong against the communists, and they were courageous, and they took it to the streets, and some priests were assassinated by the government, murdered, tortured. So kudos to them. They stood and they fought this in their own way. So I grew up in that kind of environment, which we were never told to really read the Bible. Just listen to the guy in black. He will tell you what you need to know. And then the next week. So in a way, you were going to a church on Sunday, but you were living the way you wanted to live on Monday. And, and that's the Western Christianity as well. That's what I observe here in its totally different, different approach or different title, different color, different umbrella, but the same concept. Do whatever you want and just show up on Sunday and give a little bit to the collection plate and you're good. No, that's not the biblical Christianity. With God, it's either everything or nothing. So for me, I was so discouraged by what I saw in Catholicism that I vowed never, ever to go back to church. I was so disgusted that I actually walked away from God because I associated the actions of men with the Holy God. And I met my wife. And my wife was a born-again believer, and she started to tell me about a God that I had no clue about, that he's a good father, that he hates corruption, just like I hated corruption, that he cannot be bribed, that he is not about religion, he's about relationship, that he wants to have a personal relationship with you. He loves you, he cares for you, he wants to help you, he wants to be close like a father. So she opened my eyes and I started to read the Bible and I got saved. And of course, it was a big twisted story. It took 7 years, but finally I took the knee, I said yes, and God started to work on me and with me, and started to use us as a family. But I want you to know that many people come to me and they say, oh, you're so courageous, and I want the boldness, I want that kind of a faith. You got to remember, faith is like pumping iron, if you will. It's like exercise. You have to keep doing it. You mentioned about faithfulness in little. The Bible says that when you're faithful with little, God is going to enlarge your territory. He's going to give you more. But if you're not faithful with little, so that's how you build your faith. You do the little thing. Just do the little thing. I remember when I was arrested the first time, which is like 20 years ago now, I look at my legs and they were shaking. I was so scared. I've never been more scared probably in my life. I didn't know what was happening. I thought I am living in a free and democratic society. I did not commit a crime, and I was being arrested, forced to walk backwards like a gangster, and I faced a year of imprisonment. That was a scary thing. And I look at my legs and they were shaken. But after many arrests later, many courts later, and many videos and interviews and being slandered and gossiped about and lied about thousands of times, you kind of get used to it, and your faith is being built. That it gets higher, bigger, stronger. For you to be courageous, for you to be bold, you have to be willing to take down the lions and the bears like David did. David was a shepherd of his father's flock, and he was attacked by the bears and the lions, and he was willing to fight them first. And then when he was proven to be faithful with the little that God has entrusted him with, he was able to take down the giant. When he saw the giant, he saw an opportunity. On the other side of that mountain of Amana was David's destiny. And I think that's where Christians miss the boat, because they see the giants and they said, oh my God, I can't take this guy down. No, yes, you can. He's too big to miss. When you are with God, nothing shall be impossible for you. When God is with you, it's over for your enemies. When God shows up, you already won. I think we've lost that concept. So it was a process. It took years, many obstacles. I've walked through the valley of the shadow of death many times. They tried to assassinate me multiple times. I mean, during the big lie, they put my house on fire. I don't know if you know that. In the middle of the night, they lit my house on fire with my 3 children and my wife. In the middle of the night, if it was not for my neighbor, we would be burnt alive. They unscrewed tires in my pickup truck, and driving, the tire just took off. I was multiple times physically attacked, guns, sword, knives, stones, you name it, punched. And if when I was in prison, when I was arrested for giving that sermon to the truckers, which you can still watch it on YouTube, believe it or not, they were giving incentives to at least 5 different inmates that already testified to my lawyers that the guards were giving them incentives to murder me, to beat me severely in prison. Of course, if you heard the story, you know I was taken to a max spot, freezing conditions, -28 for the most dangerous terrorists. I was viewed as the most dangerous in the country. They would not even give me a pen. I was considered too dangerous to have a pen. Freezing conditions, shivering. I was placed in metal cages, like no bigger than me sitting right here. Metal cages, suffocating, passing out multiple times. I was taken from my solitary confinement, which I was kept for 45 days, into a concrete cells. No water, no washroom, just on concrete, just for fun.
Wait, so real quick, this was all in Canada, right?
That's right. Of course, every arrest that I'm describing has happened here in Canada, in a so-called free and democratic society. You got to remember, our constitution, our rights are very similar to your rights. We have fundamentally guaranteed rights. We got a Charter of Rights and Freedoms with a preamble that starts, whereas Canada acknowledges the supremacy of God and the rule of law. We have criminal code that prohibits those authorities from doing this to us. And yet every law in the land was broken if it comes to my case. I was tortured. I was transferred by the police upside down, head on the ground, feet up. I had bruises and scars for a month. When I complained, they laughed. When I said I want pictures of my bruises and the scars and the blood, and they laughed and they said, no, we're not going to do it. They denied access to my lawyers for 3 weeks. When finally I was able to see my lawyer, it was a guard listening and writing down every word we were saying. We were on a phone that every couple minutes was interrupting, saying that the conversation is being monitored and recorded. Illegal. Everything was illegal. When I was kidnapped by the sheriffs, literally kidnapped without the knowledge of my lawyers, without the knowledge of my family, I was taken hundreds of miles away, and I was placed in a max spot for the most dangerous terrorists, and then in a psych ward. They put me Soviet style, North Korea, Chinese style. They put me in a psych ward without the evaluation of the doctors, without even the knowledge of Alberta Health Services. So that's the story. That's the level of corruption that we're dealing with, and you have no better. In your country is the same thing. And I remember when I decided to come a few years ago, when this started to United States, I was thinking I'm going to come there to your country for a couple of weeks. I spent 4 months, because what I did, I traveled from state to state. Whoever would like to listen to the story, warning Americans, listen, what is happening to us, it will happen to you. Pay attention. I am warning you. Those people are against you. They're not for you. And I was right. We have the same thing now. And it's really up to this generation. It's up to us to do what other generations were willing to do. I mean, the Nazis, you would be speaking German. I will probably be wiped out, because the Germans wanted to wipe out all Poles, just like they wanted to wipe out all the Jews. So probably my generation will be gone, but you probably would be speaking German, because that was their idea, to take over the whole land. And you got to remember also everything Adolf Hitler did, just like your crazy Biden, just like our Caligula, as we call him, the so-called prime minister, Justin Trudeau, Castro Caligula, we call him that. Everything they did was lawful, according to them. Adolf Hitler was democratically elected as the Chancellor of Germany by a democratic process. He enacted all those illegal laws while he was in power, democratically elected, just like Biden is doing to you with executive orders, infringing on your rights. So history is screaming left and right. That's why when they invaded our church in that viral video that was watched billions of times, Get Out, I called them Nazis. I didn't call them Nazis because I didn't know what I was saying. I actually called them by their proper names, trying to get attention from people like you and others. Listen to this Polish immigrant with his funny accent. Maybe perhaps you should listen to the people that lived in hell, and when hell is approaching, they're yelling and screaming, pay attention. So that's what I did when they arrested me and my brother David in the middle of the highway. We got arrested by anti-terrorists, and my charges and my brother's charges: officiating an illegal gathering, participating in illegal gathering, inciting people to come to an illegal gathering. Are you crazy? That's Nazi. That's communism. When I was charged with terrorism, interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act, and inciting mischief, faced 12 years of imprisonment for a 19-minute sermon. When we had Lord's Supper, when we were singing hymns, national anthem, when I prayed for the people, the Crown Prosecutor Stephen Johnston accused me of causing Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages. It's like my son, when he learned that, he said, like, I didn't know you're so powerful. Well, you see, that's the level of insanity. And the judge agreed, this crooked judge, Gordon Crinkin, from the province of Alberta, agreed with this pathological liar, Stephen Johnston, the Crown Prosecutor, that I am a criminal. He found me guilty on all charges. It has never been done in this country. I've not committed a crime. We have a law that protects clergy. We have law of freedom of expression. I was peacefully expressing my frustration with illegally implemented mandates, just like you were. And for that, I was found guilty on terrorism. So I was placed on house arrest for a year and a half. I could not leave my home after 7 p.m. because I was considered too dangerous. And eventually the sentencing was happening, and I'm a convicted terrorist. Believe it or not, I only because of people like you, and I want to say thank you, Americans. Thank you, anyone and everyone that was keeping eye on the story and putting pressure, like your Ohio State House, where they placed Canada on a watch list for a country that persecutes Christians. And there were many other politicians in the States that were putting pressure on the Canadian politicians. I'm still talking to you because probably I would be already assassinated or imprisoned again. So this is a serious stuff. I always say to the people, Hannah, you may not like Artur Pawlowski. I'm fine with that. I'm not running for a popularity contest. You may not like my accent. That's fine. That's okay. But think of me like a shield. I am a shield between those villains and you. It's in your best interest to fight for me, to help me, to help me to prevail against those giants of the land. Because if I go down, if people like me go down, Anna, you're next. You're next. That's history. So what we have done, we have filed an appeal. We are presently we were accepted by the Court of Appeals. My appeal is going to be heard on September, so a year from the sentencing, as this September. And we just filed a lawsuit against the Canadian government. So that's where your viewers can come. If you can, go to streetchurch.ca, streetchurch.ca, because we're still feeding thousands of people on the streets, and you can help, you can chip in. We hired an entire legal team, and we filed probably one of the biggest lawsuits against the government. We are suing a municipal, provincial, and federal government. We are going after Attorney General. We're going after the Chief of Police. We're going after the RCMP. RCMP, again, is like your FBI. We're coming after Jane Doe, John Doe in a police force. We're going after Alberta Health Services. We're going after the prison for what they have done to me, putting me in metal cages and psych ward. We're going after anyone that we can find, because someone has to show the people an example, not only how to fight, not only how to defend, ourselves, but how to go on offense. Before I went to California, when we've met for a Reawaken America tour, I asked God, what is the message you want me to tell the people? And I heard him as clear as I hear you. He said, tell the people, enough of the victim mentality. Tell them it's time on offense. It's time to move after the villains. It's time to go after them, file lawsuits, do it personally, name them, shame them, go after them, let the neighbors know who is living next to their doors. That's how we win. We have to expose them. And I think that God is looking for a man and a woman that would be willing to expose who the real virus is, because that's what those people are. They are the real virus.
Absolutely. Well, I always say, really we have two choices. We are either going to live with freedom. We can experience freedom that our founding fathers in America fought endlessly for, that they shed blood, sweat, and tears for us to enjoy. Or we can live under tyranny and be peasants, be slaves, as you were saying. And really, this is a point in history where we have to make the decision now. There's no coming back. Ronald Reagan says that once a nation has lost freedom, that generation will never see freedom again. And so we have to make the decision, as you were saying, to fight for freedom, to speak the truth. And I mean, really, the issues that we're fighting, these issues that we're talking about are basic truths that they're punishing you for, they're torturing you for. The fact that you're just reading your Bible, to the general public, they're persecuting you for that. And I don't think Christians realize, what's really happening. And I as I'm listening to your story, I'm sure you're familiar with Pastor Richard, Pastor, what is his name? Oh my goodness. Wormbrand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Romanian pastor.
What is it?
Romanian pastor.
Yes, the Romanian pastor. Yes. And just listening, I read that book when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. But your story, it really, it's troubling and it's sad, and it's in a sense, it's encouraging to know that there are more fighters like you on the front lines fighting for our freedoms. And I believe that if our country had more men like you, then we would take our country, we would take, the freedoms and liberties back that you were supposed to have in Canada, our God-given freedoms that were given to us by God that are unalienable. I believe that if our country was filled with more men like you, we would take our country back immediately. But do you have any final words? Because I know you've expressed a lot of words to America, especially because America, like, as you said, they're asleep, we're asleep. Even some of my family members, they have no idea, who our elected officials are. They have no idea who's running this country. And I believe that's part of the reason we're here, is because we have no idea what's happening. We don't know who's running, who are they? We don't know who's leading this globalist agenda, and who's attacking our freedom. So do you have any last words to Americans?
Yeah, I just want to tell you that when you were celebrating globally the victory over the Nazis, we were taken over by the Soviets. From 1945 to 1989, we were subjected to slavery. Look how long it takes. It takes decades. If we're not going to do this the right way now, maybe our grandchildren will be able to rise up and fight. But we don't know. We don't know how long this enslavement is going to last, if we will allow them to get away, literally to get away with genocide, with murder. So we don't have an option. And it's quite fascinating, because people are looking at my story and other people's story, and they will say, well, I don't have those types of problems. We still have fundamentally guaranteed rights. We don't face those craziness. Well, if you don't exercise your right, the government is not going to come bursting into your house if you are not a threat to the establishment, if you're not a threat to their corruption, if you're not exposing them, if you're not talking about them, if you're not resisting tyranny. Adolf Hitler didn't have a problem with those that comply. I mean, if you put your swastika out, you're good. You're a good guy. The government will be blessing you, right? As long as you get along with the government, as long as you are supporting the pharaohs of today. The pharaohs will have no beef with you. They will tax you to death. As long as you're paying your taxes, that's fine. You're just a slave. You're just a social insurance number to them. That's why some of those people, the majority of the people, are not experiencing any opposition from the government because they're useless in the kingdom of God. They're not doing anything. And the same goes with the pastors. Pastors that are obedient to Satan, pastors that are obedient to Obama's, Clinton's, Schwab's, whatever the devil, you can put your own personalized name out there. Well, the devil will have no beef with you because he already owns you. You're already working for the devil. In Canada, 99% of the pastors turned their churches into vaccine clinics. They shut down, they segregated, they separated, they muzzled their congregants. They did everything that Satan was telling them to do. So the government will have no problem with you. They will give you incentives, and the churches got millions of dollars, actually billions of dollars churches received from the Canadian government for doing this great evil to the people. But when you become David, when you are willing to be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and you are actually willing to go to the fire, you got to remember, Hannah, instead of running away from the fire, we have to remember that in the fire, God deals with our enemies. In the fire, Jesus shows up to set us free, not outside the fire. In the valley of the shadow of death, he walks with us. It's in the fire that we have a testimony. Why do you think I was able to preach to hundreds of millions of people around the world? Because what? I did what everybody else did? No, because I was willing to die on this hill. You see, I'm willing to die on a hill called faith. I am willing to pay the price, pick up that cross daily to keep my Jesus and integrity and faith and truth. But we don't have many people like this, especially clergy. I'm ashamed. I am ashamed of what pastors did and priests did in the past 3.5 years. So we're dealing with great cowardice. What we need is a prayer for boldness and courage. What they've done globally, they terrorize the entire world. What we need to do globally, we need to spread the courage and the boldness. We need to show the people. And I think my story, that's why I believe God is using my story, because my story is very simple. I'm not the most talented man. I'm not the most articulate man. I'm not, PhD in theology or history. I'm just, I smell like a sheep and I smell like a goat, just like David. I smell like a fish, just like the apostles, Peter. I'm just a Peter, a regular guy. But God is looking for anyone who will go for us, who will stand against this evil in the land. Well, my answer was very simple. Here I am, Lord, use me. That's it. If you want to use a guy, I wouldn't use myself. I would not use a guy like me. But if you want to use a man like me, here I am. Use me. And I think that attitude pleases God. We need to rise up, especially men. I want to talk to men. Where are you? Look, here is a kid that is fighting for you, is fighting for men. Where are you in this fight? Really, we need now children to rise up and fight for us? Where are the parents? Where are the grandparents that allowed this evil to creep into our nations? You need it. Peters, God is calling back Peters. Yes, you have denied Jesus, but God is calling you. He understands fear and he says, I'll give you boldness. I'll give you courage. Come back to me, Peters, and I will restore you. Enough of denying him, enough of being embarrassed by the truth. We have nothing to be ashamed of. So the story needs to go out there that if a guy like me, a little guy without money, without political power, don't get me wrong, I have my king, I have Jesus. And when Jesus shows up, it's over for the villains. But from the human point of view, if a man like me can stand the most powerful people in the country, attorney general, prime minister, premiers, multiple mayors, and still stand, you don't see me suicidal, you don't see me depressed, you don't see me, oh, poor me, whining and complaining. No, we are lions and lionesses, and God is calling his pride, and he says, go after the hyenas. It's our time to go after the hyenas. Enough of the hyenas ruling over us. Now we got to go after them. If a man like me can do it, Hannah, I'm telling you, anyone can.
That's right. Well, I have to say real quick, I know you're super busy and you have to go, I'm sure, but I want to say, actually a year ago this month, I held the first Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally, and I'm here in Tennessee, the state of Tennessee. And I couldn't find one pastor in the state of Tennessee or in my area, I'll say, to support this Teens Against Gender Mutilation rally. And to me, I was 15 when I held this rally last year. And to me, that was very discouraging. The fact that not a single pastor, the churches are supposed to be at the forefront of America, right? They're supposed to be leading the gate. They're supposed to be leading this pathway for freedom and for the truth to be heard. And they won't even come out. They won't even support this rally, saying that there are only two genders and you can't change your sex. We had Chloe Cole, the 19-year-old detransitioner that's going through menopausal symptoms from what the medical industry did to her. And I believe, we're here at a point in society where these things are happening because the church, just like you said, and communism, there is no God, and Maoism during the 1950s, 60s, Mao was the God. They had a picture of Mao in every single household, in the bedrooms, in the kitchens, whatever, because Mao was the God. And in communism, there is no God per se. There is no, heavenly, a King of Kings God. And for me, I believe that's why the church is under so much attack. That's why we as Christians are under so much attack, is because that's their first takedown. They first have to take down Christians. They first have to take down the church in order to take over the nation. And so, for me, it's really sad to see the amount of churches that cowered down during 2020. Just like you said, 90% of churches in Canada were vaccine clinics. And to me, that's sad. It's sickening. And it was very discouraging for me, when I held this rally, to see that not a single pastor would stand against genital mutilation, a common sense issue, not even something that's controversial. It's just biblical truth.
Again, going back to history is yelling and screaming right now. The first thing that always goes down is religion, or freedom of religion, because the totalitarian regimes, the wannabe pharaohs, they have to eliminate competition. They want to be gods and they want you to worship them. That's why religion goes first. But you know what's fascinating? And again, that's history. That's not Artur Pawlowski preaching. That's history. That the moment freedom of religion goes, all your other rights follow. I'll tell you what my wife was saying for many years. And at that time, I could not fully understand what she was saying. But she said, Art, the charitable tax status is keeping the church like a dog on a leash, muzzled up. And of course, when a big lie started to happen in 2020, I said, wow, she was right from the very beginning. Because you know why the pastors refuse to support you? Like, if I was there, I would be there with you, because that's me. I'm a Polish immigrant. I understand what's going on, and I love the truth. You see, the truth shall set the captives free, not the church buildings, not our masses, not the collection parade, but the truth will set the captives free. So I would be there with you. However, you got to remember that those people are governed by a business principle. They're preaching to the wallet. They're being led on a leash like a dog by the government, and they're muzzled. It's the government that is their God, that is telling them what they're allowed to participate in, what they're not allowed to talk about. In Canada, that's 99% of the churches. I'm being told repeatedly not to get involved in politics. And I'm telling to them, like, I don't find that in the Bible. Can you show it to me in the Bible that I am not allowed to be the light in the darkness? Actually, I find it opposite. My job description is to be the light in the darkness in every sphere of influence, all the 7 mountains of influence, educational system. What do we have right now? We got indoctrination camps. We don't educate kids anymore. I mean, they believe in 10,000 different genders. Are you kidding me? There's only 3 genders. And I said that yesterday. I was preaching in a church in British Columbia, and I told the people, I have found only 3 genders in the Bible, not 10,000. Male, female, and stupid. There is absolutely no other gender in the Bible. So where is this nonsense coming from? Now the kids believe that they can milk a bull. Try it and call me so I can bring my camera and capture that on camera, your fast departure from this side of eternity. This is insanity. We used to help people like this. Now we encourage them. So entertainment system that is mocking God, banking system that has enslaved us with loans, student loans and mortgages and all kinds of credit cards and insanity. We're talking about political arena. Minister in an old English language is a servant. Prime minister means the first servant. Who they are serving? They're serving their own bellies. People in the churches should follow God and his commandments. What do they follow? Some kind of a health inspector's commandment. They're afraid of a virus, a seasonal flu, while my Jesus was healing lepers. What is going on? We walked away. So my job and everybody's job that is awakened and filled with the Holy Spirit is to bring light into darkness, is to oppose corruption, to be vocal about it, because the truth sets the captives free. So it's a very interesting time, because I believe that God is sifting us, all of us. We are under a judgment. The judgment starts in the house of the Lord. I think what God is doing visually and physically and spiritually is a segregation, a separation between the real shepherds from the hired guns, sheep from the wolves, sheep from the goats. Right now, you know who is who in the zoo. You can tell who is real, and you can tell clearly who is fake.
Yep, you're exactly right. You know, my dad always says that, you know, right now we're seeing, like you said, the sifting, but we're seeing this tares from the wheats. You know, we're seeing who is actually on the side, the good side with God, who is on God's side or who's on Satan's side. Because, you know, in scripture, it says you can only serve one master, either the God or Satan. And right now we're seeing, you know, many people that call themselves Christians who in fact are not Christians. Their God is Satan. And yeah, it's sad to see, but I'm encouraged by you, and I'm encouraged by many others. And actually, when I spoke at the rally that I held, I told, you know, people this quote from George Washington, and it takes pain to bring truth to light. And so right now, I believe, you know, we're going through a birthing pain. We're seeing what's happening. We're going through some pain, but this is nothing compared to the eternal pain of spending eternity apart from God, separated from God in hell. So, you know, I always encourage people, you know, we're all going to face judgment day, and we're all going to be asked this one question: what did you do when it was your turn to take a stand? What did you do when I was knocking at your door with this issue and you did not take a stand? And so I believe that, again, like you said, this is a time that's being revealed to us, who is on the Lord's side and who is following Satan, the author of confusion. But I really appreciative of what you and your family was doing. Or still continue to do. But can you share a little bit about where they can find you and where they can support you and your church?
Yeah, of course, I'm facing the same thing that so many others are facing: censorship, deplatforming. Yep. So I've lost my big YouTube channel, but you can go to Pastor Artur Pawlowski Rumble. I'm trying to build that channel right now. It has not taken even one video. So they're standing for freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Also, if you want to support our legal fight, I mean, I got 3 legal teams. We got lawyers for the appeal. We've got the lawyers fighting for my son and others that were attacked by those crazy bylaws. And also I have a team that we filed a lawsuit against those people. So go to streetchurch.ca. Again, street, because we are on the streets feeding thousands of people every single week, 3 times a week, streetchurch.ca. And I also pastor a church building. So we have 6 times a week services, 3 times on the streets, 3 times in a building. And if you Google my name, I mean, I'm all over the place, and I'll be visiting your capital in just a few weeks, praying for United States of America. I was invited by politicians to come and pray for America, for the spirit of repentance. So I will be traveling a lot. I am coming with my book from prison. I was so crazy busy, I could not just find time to do it, but now we are almost done, and you will be able to see day by day what those people did to us, and the whole story, the background of the story, you know, from the 2020 attack on our liberties and our lives. So that will be coming in a few months, and God wills it, I'll be that, and I hope that I'll be able to awaken others. I'm super glad that you got involved. My son Nathaniel got activated as well. He's doing his podcast and he's fighting, and I see more and more young people. We hosted Josh Alexander here in Calgary, and he was arrested, and my son was arrested as well, opposing this homosexual perversion. And so I find young men, and I am very hopeful. As long as we have young people like you rising up, we have not lost. And again, I want the people to know that the moment God shows up, there is a scripture that says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. If you want your liberty back, bring God back to your life, and He will show up with His liberty. Remember that we have already won. I know how this story ends. I've read the Bible many times, and it says we win in the end. He's coming back to judge the living and the dead, and justice will be served. I'm telling you, don't get discouraged. Justice, retribution will be served sooner or later, because God is not a corrupted judge. Actually, He told me when I was facing my oppressors, those crooked judges, multiple of them, He said to me, I am the judge of judges. They will get what they deserve. He does not take any bribery. I'm telling you, you cannot twist His hand. He is still a King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And I'm telling you, I'm super excited serving the winner. We are victors. We have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Artur, for everything you're doing. I encourage my listeners and everyone that I have met recently. I've been telling them about your story and what you're doing. So thank you all so much. And I appreciate you guys, and God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in to the Hannah Faulkner Show today with Pastor Artur Pawlowski. His story is so sad to hear, but it's encouraging to know that there are more fighters on the front lines fighting for our freedoms, not just in America, but in Canada and across the world. At the end, I said this quote from George Washington, and it's truth will ultimately prevail when there is pain to bring it to light. And I believe right now what we're seeing is we're seeing pain. We're seeing people go through pains. We're seeing people getting persecuted. But I believe in this pain that we're experiencing, this persecution that we're experiencing, we're seeing truth being revealed. We're seeing eyes being opened. And I pray and I believe that in 2024, there will be a revival in our country, and we can get Donald J. Trump back in office this November. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys were encouraged. Please share this with your friends. Don't forget to follow us at Hannah Faulkner 1776 on Instagram, Twitter, Hannah F 1776. Follow us on Rumble, The Hannah Faulkner Show, so you don't miss another episode. And don't forget to check out our merch at cultureof1776.com. Thank you all so much for joining. Stay in the fight, stay encouraged. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.